Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for being with me today. My name is Rafael Vasquez, and I'm doing this presentation as faculty at Santa Rosa Junior College. This one is called Living Undocumented in a World of Uncertainty. And again, my name is Rafael Vasquez Guzman. One of the things that, when you're undocumented, one of the things that happens is if somebody is having issues with maybe the fires, you don't just have issues with the fires, but you also have issues with a lot of other items. So today, one of the things I'm going to be talking about is that, that is not as simple as maybe just having the issue with the fires. I'll be talking about the issue also of people having issues with COVID. Why do we have such a high number of infections with COVID among the Latinx community? And specifically the undocumented Latinx community that I work with a lot of the time. I will also have some suggestions about what we all can do if we choose to in order to support our undocumented brothers, sisters, and non-gender conforming individuals in Sonoma County. The first thing that we always have to do really when we talk about immigration is we need to understand why people migrate to this country. And so when we talk about the reasons for migration, specifically from Latin America, you're welcome to check out this wonderful book called Harvest of Empire. I double check, and Santa Rosa Junior College Library has a copy of it. And again, the reasons why we migrate are civil wars, for example. So we're talking about El Salvador, Nicaragua, Chile, Honduras. In my class of Latin America and the Caribbean, Humanities 23, we are just about to have that conversation about 9/11. And when I usually, during the good times when we are in the classroom, I usually just write a big 9/11 in the class, in the, what is it called, on the whiteboard, and then I ask students to just throw at me all of the things that come to their mind in regards to 9/11. And they talk about terrorists, and they talk about airplanes, and they talk about this, that, and illegal invasions, blah, 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 blah. And then I go to the board and I put a slash and I add 1973. And that was when the United States, using the CIA and its allies, we went to Chile. And as a result of that, lots of people had to leave Chile, and they ended up in Mexico, other countries, and of course, the United States. And I think a lot of us are familiar with, or to a certain degree, culpability as a country in El Salvador, Nicaragua, and most recently in Honduras when Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, went and organized the coup d'etat in 2009 under the direction of Barack Obama, which forced 50,000 or so children and young adults, and many of them ended up in the US Mexican border. 8 out of every 10 female young individuals ended up being raped in the process of getting to the US Mexican border, only to be kept in cages. And many of them are still in those situations. So, again, it's about understanding this. Once we understand this, then we can move forward to understand the next steps. And so, Harvest of Empires, a beautiful book. We also have the DVD if you don't have more than 2 hours to read the book. At our Santa Rosa Junior College Library, we have the DVD that tells you basically the visual story of that book. And then drug wars, again, the United States is the highest consumer of illegal drugs in the Western hemisphere. And so there has been a lot of research on this. And then, of course, we migrate to this country because of poverty created by NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, and then in addition to CAFTA is the one that included Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And so these individual treaties were meant to increase, the production of products and everything else, thereby keeping immigrants in their home countries. But we know that that didn't happen, and many individuals ended up migrating to the United States, and they make their homes here in this country now. So here, if you go to socoemergency.org, you will be able to see the latest information But just specifically for Sonoma County cases by race or ethnicity, the Latinx population is 27.3% of the population, yet the number of cases of COVID is 65%. Interestingly enough, it's almost an opposite when you look at the white non-Hispanic population, which is 27% of the cases, but 62.9% of the population. And so that brings us to this conversation as to why is this happening. A lot of the people who ended up, who are of Latinx background and ended up getting COVID, have done so for many reasons. So when we talk about the reasons for infections, one, what we're finding out all the time is that the governmental officials who are supposed to protect these individuals are actually, they lack the understanding of who even lives in their communities. And this is not just in Sonoma County, we see it in many other places. But I'll focus in Sonoma County because here in Sonoma County, this is where Santa Rosa Junior College facilities are, and this is the population that we're serving, although I will mention other locations later on. And so when we talk about the lack of understanding by authorities of the population they serve, there was what is called a piece of research that was done around 2007, 2008 that said that in Sonoma County, there are about 65 languages spoken, yet most often than not, people focus on English and in Spanish. And that's it. That's all that people think about. But the reality is we are a very diverse county. And if the information is not being provided in multiple languages, then you run into these issues. So again, when the government doesn't provide information in Triqui, Mixteco, Chatino, Zapoteco, and all of the other languages that are spoken, then what we end up with is a huge number of the population is not included in knowing how to protect themselves during the fires of 2017, when individuals, instead of going to shelters that were created for them, they ended up living or staying overnight for a few days actually in many of the vineyards. They were afraid that if they went to a shelter, immigration was going to show up and pick them up and take them out of here. During COVID, many individuals haven't been told about what are the issues, how does it transmit in a language that they understand, and the county to this day does not provide information. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I am, as a member of the media, when I have my show on KBBF, Líderes del Futuro is the name of my show, I get access to some of these meetings about the county and how they are promoting the idea of vaccination. And we just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago during which I had to almost stop the meeting and protest because they were talking about how to outreach to the indigenous peoples of undocumented community members in Sonoma County, yet they didn't even provide translation from English to Spanish so that the speakers of these different languages who were in the call would be able to translate in other languages. And so the county and many individuals, including at Santa Rosa Junior College, we talk about equity, yet we don't practice it, right? So again, this is why people get sick. Many individuals also get their information, unfortunately, from Facebook and Instagram and other places where somebody puts a short video and says, you know, COVID is a creation of the government. The vaccine, they are just trying to inject some type of tracking device on you. Don't go get tested because that's where you're going to pick up COVID. All of these messages are going around. And because the information is not being made available in the languages that people need to receive them in, unfortunately, the consequences are that people get infected much more often. And many individuals who are undocumented and have migrated to the United States, unfortunately, come from countries that have corrupt governments. And so you have learned not to trust the police, not to trust any government official in general. And so even if the information sometimes gets to you, if it's not from a trustworthy individual, you may not believe it. So things like, is COVID real? And I'll show a bit of research that one of my former students is doing at UC Santa Barbara. And for college undocumented students, including Santa Rosa Junior College students, the question of is COVID real or not, and trying to convince their parents of this has been a huge challenge in the undocumented community. And so it's really, really important. And then for our undocumented community, again, the lack of unemployment benefits is another major issue. So there is no money if you're sick. You don't qualify for food stamps. You don't qualify for any other type of services. You may not have insurance. You may believe that you have to have insurance to be able to go and get tested or get services when you actually get COVID. But most importantly, because you do not have a pile of money just saved up there in order to pay your rent and food and other needs, there are some moments where if you get COVID and you are the only person in the household who can go out and work and make some money, you may just have to choose to do that. Is that unfortunately infecting other people? Likely. But again, if you don't have the knowledge, if you don't have the information, and you don't have any other tools, then this is what happens. You may remember that while many of us got the $1,200 last year from the federal government as a stimulus check, or undocumented community members, including in families with mixed status, did not. And by mixed status, I mean maybe the husband has legal status, maybe the wife doesn't, then they didn't get that stimulus check. So the government of the state of California got some donations, put $75 million together, and we almost had, marches and protests because our undocumented brothers, sisters, and non-conforming gender individuals were getting $500. Not everybody, but 500 per household. And so again, when you are dealing with those issues, it's very, very challenging for you to be able to succeed, to be able to get out there and not get everybody infected. Yet, in the fires of 2017, or undocumented community members were considered essential workers. And while perhaps you and I were able to leave our homes and be in motels, hotels, or just far away, or essential workers had to go and work in the fields. No masks, no protection. You just have to work or you get fired. And the exact same thing happened during the fires of 2020. There are plenty of reports, and I'll show some pictures in a moment from The Intercept, from Mother Jones, the LA Times, and others, where again, you see the pictures of these individuals, and in the background, you can see the smoke. There is no protection that is being provided to these individuals. The other thing that is important in the fires of 2020, when we went to the first press conference with representatives from the county of Sonoma, the supervisors, I remember clearly I was there as a representative of my show on KBBF bilingual radio, and a Latinx woman asked a question in Spanish towards the beginning of the press conference, and the president of the board of the supervisors said, "Can you please ask the question in English?" And so I was next on the list. They called on me, and my first question to them was, how can you have a press conference that affects 500,000 people when 27% of the population are limited and many of them don't understand or speak English, yet you don't provide translation, right? So either through, direct actions, or through ignorance, or elected officials choose not to be inclusive of this population. Yet they are considered essential workers, yet they go and work every day in the fields. And the question was asked, why is it that you're forcing these people to go and work in places where you have evacuated people from there? And during that conference, they said nothing. They in fact told me that they would get back to me, which they didn't. Eventually, I sent multiple emails and they never got back to me. We had set up an appointment with a representative and eventually nothing happened. So, again, at some point, we have to ask how is it that we can be comfortable benefiting from the work and the dangerous situations that these individuals are having to work under, yet there's no benefits for them. And so at some point, we need to see it as the government endangering the lives of the immigrant community, because that's exactly what they are doing in those situations. And what do we know? What we know is that, again, individuals in the wine industry, again, because they contribute so much for tourism and so on and so forth, they are given certain privileges that are not given to other individuals. And this came out in the LA Times in October of 2017 as part of the reporting when we had the major fire here in Sonoma County, the big one, right? But it didn't just happen in 2017. It's been happening for a while. This is a reporting from September 6th of 2020, where again, while many individuals in August were able to leave their homes, undocumented workers, and I fully understand that not everybody that works in the fields, in the grapes and so on, are undocumented, but a large portion of them are, right? So again, while the rest of the people are moved out to a safe space, these people were sent in for the harvest here in Sonoma County. And so this is a picture that somebody shared um, online, and I wanted to share it. And again, these are considered essential workers. Many of them are of indigenous backgrounds. Many of them are undocumented. They don't speak Spanish. So even if you just put a bunch of information in Spanish, they're not going to understand it. I know this because I have been working with an organization that used to be called the FIOP for many decades, and I used to be a translator from English to Spanish for some of them, and eventually it would be translated in other languages. And this comes from the access verification application, and I'll explain. But basically, once you are applying, if you are the owner of a winery, maybe you have cows that produce milk for the community. Um, During the fires, this is part of the request, and it says the requester is solely responsible for the safety of those individuals included in the request and is responsible for any damage to property or equipment. Now, when this was sent to lawyers, the lawyers from Sonoma County Legal Aid Foundation, they said that there is questionable behavior here. Are they forcing or undocumented community members to sign their rights away if they die as a result of the fires, if they die as a result of the pandemic, if they die because, again, maybe not today, but maybe in 5 years, because of, again, the fires and the carcinogens in the air, they develop cancer. This basically tells the state of the county of Sonoma, I'm sorry, that they will not be responsible if these individuals suffer in any way. And so during the fires of 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, the Sonoma County Department of Agriculture issued access verification requests to over 300 employers, including, again, vineyard owners and managers. And we don't know how many thousands of workers were forced to go in the fields without any type of PPE or personal protective equipment. And these are the parents of our college students at Santa Rosa Junior College. These are the parents, or some of them are actually our non-credit ESL, English as a second language learners. And during the day, they are doing this, and at night, they are trying to learn another language. And so at some point, we have to ask ourselves, what is our responsibility as a community college to this population? If the county is not doing the work, we cannot just say, well, that's the county's job. No, they are our students, right? We are a community college, and I've said this multiple times. We are a community college. They pay their taxes so that we can function. What is our responsibility to them? How often are we producing material to educate them in languages that they will understand? Because we cannot assume that they're all English and Spanish speakers. For those of you who are faculty members in the ESL department here today, you know that we get immigrants from all over the world. So again, we have to ask ourselves that. If we are talking about equity, we have to ask ourselves that. And so here are a couple of pictures. This one is from Mother Jones. And what you can see all the way in the background, and this is again from the fall of 2020, what you can see in the background is a lot of smoke. One individual is wearing a mask, and the other individuals are not wearing masks because these masks were not being provided to them by their employers. Here you see another couple of examples. And again, the fires are happening in the background, and individuals are just working out there in the fields like nothing. And then on the right side, again, you are seeing an individual in the harvest in the evening. And it's a little bit harder to see in that one, but in the background, there's a bunch of smoke. And I apologize for the quality of the pictures. That one, I believe, came from the LA Times, if I am not mistaken. So again, these individuals are working day and night with limited to no personal protective equipment. I was made aware that in Sonoma County, one of the largest wine growers waited until the city of Santa Rosa offered them thousands of free masks because they wouldn't buy their own masks for their employees. And this one, because I want to show you that it doesn't just happen in Sonoma County, this one is from the state of Florida. And these are cucumber workers who right now in the middle of the pandemic are working out there in the fields, no personal protective equipment, again, no masks, and they're just being forced to work like any other day. They're in direct contact with each other, and this is why they are getting infected on a regular basis with, again, COVID. And because they don't have the money to just stay home and take a break for those 10 to 14 days like many of us can, they have to go to work every day, and that's just their reality. And so when I talk about the research that my former student is doing, this is Monica Cornejo, who's working on her PhD over at UC Santa Barbara. The title of her research is Latina, Latino, Latinx, Undocumented Immigrants Coping with COVID-19 Pandemic. So what she does is she reach out and she interview college students who are at community colleges, including Santa Rosa Junior College and other universities in California. And what she did is she asked them a lot of questions. And again, if anybody's interested, I can share with you the PDF file of the brief that she put together. But the one that I wanted to put here is about the last 30 days about their mental and physical health. How often are they having trouble? Are they worried about their physical health? And they're, again, suffering from depression, anxiety, so on and so forth. And a lot of the time, these individuals, again, what type of services are we providing? And I'll talk about the county in Sonoma and their failures in regards to mental health, but also what is Santa Rosa Junior College doing to provide enough services to these individuals? Do we have enough Spanish speaker therapists? Are they available during the times that these individuals are able to receive those services? If again they are being forced to work in the fields during the day, when do they have time to sit down and go to school and go to therapy? Are there other services available? So I'll share some of the work that my other organization is doing, but this is important, okay? Because if your student is not showing up to class, what are you doing as a faculty member? What are you doing to be able to be supportive? If you work in an office, maybe not as a faculty, but maybe an administrator, maybe as classified staff or classified professionals, what services are we providing these individuals? And so, again, some of our SRJC students were part of that research, and I am really happy that she is doing this type of work for the community to educate the community. And so the issue for us is we keep losing students. We keep losing students for many different reasons. We lose students because there is often no internet that is working at home. I know this because in my class that I'm teaching this semester, Latin America and the Caribbean, um, I have a student that logs in and then they drop, comes back, I let them in, and then they drop. And we are doing this all throughout the class. And then she usually sends me a private message or she sends me an email and says, I apologize, today is not a good day. The Wi-Fi is not working, or too many people are connected in my household. I have brothers, sisters who are K-12, and sometimes I get kicked out so that they can stay in, and sometimes they get kicked out as I am coming in. So again, I actually had to reach out to a colleague yesterday because a ESL student, non-credit, reached out to me and said, can I borrow a laptop from Santa Rosa Junior College? And again, I went through the website because I wanted to see the experience. And I went through the main website. I looked here and there, and nowhere could I find a direct, immediate link to the laptops. I had to reach out to this colleague, and I was grateful of how quickly she said, okay, here's the link. She emailed it to me. I emailed it to the students, and then I showed the student how to fill out the form. Again, those are the things that if we're talking about equity, I have internet at home as a faculty member when I'm teaching, but how do I make sure that all of my colleagues, as I like to call them, in the class are also able to connect, are able to participate fully in the process? So again, we need to do more as far as outreach, as far as putting buttons on the main page and telling students, you want this right here, you want this right there. And I've noticed and I've visited several other websites in other colleges, and they have it so obvious that there are no questions about it. So I know that there are more laptops. I know there are, again, those hotspots and everything else, but do the students know, right? That's the question. When they're at home, a lot of the students don't have privacy to participate in the classes in the same way that there is no privacy often, again, to be able to not just participate in the classes, but be able to, again, go to therapy, right? I've had students, one of my students actually goes to her car to participate in my class because we have small group discussions, and that is an issue that we find all the time. Um, and we have some faculty. I absolutely will not demand or expect students to be showing their face in camera all the time for the lectures that we're giving for the class time. I will not do that. That is not only disrespectful from my point of view, but we may be violating the privacy of other family members. And how will we react if we suddenly observe something that may be happening in the household? At what point are we going to have to call 911 because something is happening there? And what is our legal responsibility? And at what point are we making that information available to the other 20, 30, or 40 students in the class? So that, again, sometimes adds more stress, and we've had this conversation with my colleagues in my class this semester. And again, as I mentioned, family members in the K-12 system are also trying to connect. Or sometimes if you are the college student, you also have to monitor the younger brother, the younger sister, to make sure they show up to the classes, to make sure they are participating. Many of our college students who happen to be undocumented have lost their employment. Many of them work in the service industry, such as restaurants, So they don't need any servers right now. They may need less cooks at a restaurant. Therefore, they lost their employment. So now they are having to work one or two or three different jobs, and they are doing that. That's why they are not in college. And the other reality is many students are not comfortable doing online classes besides of the items that I have mentioned. It's difficulty focusing, difficulty understanding some subjects that are being presented to them. So I would say on a weekly basis, I have that conversation with about 5 to 10 students who said, this semester I'm not going, or how do I do it to drop late this class? I just had one last night because I'm not understanding anything the professor is teaching. And again, some of our students have gotten sick with COVID. And even though all the interactions we're having are via distance learning, at the same time, if they are sick, everybody reacts to COVID differently. So some of them may not be able to participate for a few days, and now they just fell behind, and they are, they're not going to pass the class. And again, the lack of economic support, not just from the state, not just from the county, but Santa Rosa Junior College. And so, again, it's important for us to be supportive of our students. So, as faculty, as classified, a student comes in and says, I lost my job. I don't know what to do. Is there anything I can do? I want to stay in college. Well, there's supposed to be emergency grants from the feds, the CARES grants, and then there's supposed to be a little bit of funding to support our undocumented community. I put a note there in the PowerPoint because I have a student who has applied twice to get some type of funding and is frustrated because not only is there no response, simply there is no funding. That student, unfortunately, had to leave their home for safety reasons, and as a result of that, they have to come up with a pay of rent on their own, food, transportation, and everything else. Yet there is no funding, and it's not the only student, but that's the one I will mention here. So a lot of our students, again, if they are not working, if they lost their job, if they lost hours of work, now they have to figure out between, do I pay the rent? Do I pay my insurance? Or do I buy food? So we need to provide on a regular basis. Again, if we're talking about equity, yes, it's wonderful that we provide, I believe, food distribution on campus through the food bank once a month, but what other information is being provided on a weekly basis through the Fairfax, through the app, and everything else, through to all of the other food banks in the community, right? The other centers, the one at Cook Middle School, so on and so forth, that are close by to our students. And then the other thing, again, going back to the idea of depression, which is a lot of our students are suffering from depression. I know some faculty, some classify, if not all, have dealt with depression because of the situation we're in. So if we understand how we are trying to cope with it, we can only imagine how our students are trying to cope with this. And so the Sonoma County has a hotline, and that's the phone number, the 707-565-2652. Yet their service hours are 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you know anything about psychology, and if you know anything about depression, and if you know anything about suicidal ideation, what do we know? We know that it's not when you're interacting at work, it's not when the family is awake that you are going to have a lot of feelings of anxiety and so on and so forth. Is when everything is quiet at 10, at 11, or at midnight when you're finally trying to sleep. Yet the county of Sonoma is not providing that service, no matter how many emails I've sent to the supervisors. And so again, this is where Santa Rosa Junior College can step in and say, hey, either we are going to advocate for the county of Sonoma to expand those hours, or we are going to provide something that is available for a quick check-in with our students whenever they need it, 24 hours a day. Before she left, Shirley Zane, previous supervisor at the county, finally reached back to me and she said, we have the money to provide additional hours, but we are not going to do it until people literally call and ask for it. And I said, well, I'm advocating for probably thousands of our community members who speak Spanish. Never got a response. And then we have students who have learning challenges, right? And so, when our students have learning challenges, the issue here becomes, are we being equitable? Are we providing the right support? And again, before I continue, I want to make sure that people understand I'm not here to accuse anybody, but we all have to become the voices of the people who don't have access to the mic, as I like to say, right? Michel Trudeau says, history is written by the victor. And so in this situation, we as faculty, we as administrators, we as classified professionals, we need to advocate. And that's the reason I'm doing this, having this dialogue with you today. And so again, learning challenges. What happens to the student who doesn't know that there is more support or that legally there should be more support for them? And so in my class, again, I try to make the materials as accessible as possible. I try to put students to collaborate in groups from day one. I do check-ins. I mention mental health services every day, every time, literally every time. And I finish my class by reminding them that I care about them, to please take care, and that they can always reach out if they need to be directed somewhere else. We are not just here to teach. We are social workers and we are here to do whatever is necessary. That is what the community college faculty member, administrator, and classified professional is here to do. And one of the biggest issues that I'm hearing about almost on a daily basis, I have to be honest, in my role as a classified professional, is the lack of empathy by other faculty members. The same thing in my class. Sometimes the conversation, the class delves a little bit for a few minutes into that. Well, faculty members are forcing us to keep our cameras on when in my house, I don't have the privacy to do that. Well, I sent an email to a faculty member, and the response I got not only was very unprofessional, it lacked empathy about my personal situation. My father got COVID. I had to, provide for my family, so I'm a little bit behind on my assignments. I asked for additional time, and the professor said, and this is a direct quote, "You are a college student now. Act like it," right? So it's important that we communicate with each other, that we reach out to other faculty members, other professionals, because it also happens with classified professionals. Let's be empathetic. Let's be more patient. Let's ask the basic questions. How are you today? Let's not just be a business of, okay, what do you need? Because I have 3 other phone calls to return. This is your time. What can I do to serve you? Right? That is, should be our approach. I personally have been taking that approach for over 16 years in my profession as a classified professional and in my classroom. And I invite everybody to start doing that. And again, educational institutions' failure to understand the population they serve. So again, just like the Sonoma County, here at Santa Rosa Junior College, we have probably more than 40 languages that are spoken in the college. And so are we providing information in multiple languages? Are we attempting to do so? And if not, are we referring people to agencies that can provide for those resources? That is really important. And when we talk about the fear of the unknown, for our undocumented brothers, sisters, and non-gender conforming individuals, it's important to understand that individuals, that are dealing, again, we're not dealing with the fires only. We're not just dealing with COVID, but we don't know when immigration is going to show up and do a raid. In October, right before the elections, this happens whether the president is a Democrat or a Republican. In October, right before elections, presidential elections every 4 years, immigration starts showing up, right? And it's not just then, but it's always during that period of time for sure. Just yesterday, one of my students from Windsor sent me a picture of a license plate from a federal agent, a vehicle of a federal agent, and we are requesting clarification as to what they were doing in Windsor yesterday, taking pictures of Latinx community members as they were driving and walking in what would be the equivalent of downtown Windsor. They call it the Green. Um, and so again, these people immediately they got home, they communicated with me, they shared the picture. I shared it with our attorneys that I have access to and I'm privileged to, and they are taking it to the next level. They're taking it to the congressman to find out what they were doing and why they were using cell phones to take pictures of our Latinx community members. And so the fear of the unknown is you don't know. And I've always say this, when you get as a parent or an adult, a college student perhaps, when you get behind the wheel every morning because you're going to work, because you're going to school, because you're going to wherever you're going, you always look at yourself in the rearview mirror one time because this may be the last time you are coming home. So coming home for a lot of our Latinx and other undocumented immigrant community members, coming home is almost just a celebration, an extra. Oh, we made it through another day, right? So if they are in your classes, if they are coming to you, if they are a little bit short tempered, don't take it personal. Be empathetic because they are dealing with trauma that comes from childhood often, but it's trauma that is repeating on a regular basis simply because they don't have that 9-digit social security number that says you are okay to be here. And again, as an institution, how much more work do we need to do to provide with them, to provide them with the right support? That is a question that I think we need to continue to have. And I am privileged that I get to work with so many of these individuals. Again, often in the classroom, we have teachers that teach in one way, which is not always inclusive, not inclusive of our people of color, not inclusive of our undocumented students, not inclusive of our diverse type of learning styles, right? And so as a result of that, that creates an unhealthy space. Personal bias, right? I always, when I'm in the classroom, I always ask myself, am I reaching everybody in the class? And that's why I do lecture, I show PowerPoint, I use video, I engage with students in small group discussions, right? All of those things are necessary. And I always encourage students, if anybody is being disrespectful in those small group discussions, you immediately send me a message. We will address it. Again, and it's about not tolerating certain things, right? We cannot assume that if I teach in the same way as the material was presented 30 years ago to a mostly white student population, that everybody better get it because everybody learns different and we have to be inclusive and respectful. Years ago, I mentioned that we all should work to increase the diversity in our classes. And I remember correctly that one of our faculty members from the math department said, I teach math. There is no space in math for me to be inclusive of the indigenous peoples or the Latinx community. But for those who know, the Maya, right, with their mathematical equations and everything else, you can still teach math and teach about diversity at the same time, right? Some of the best libraries and the first libraries were not even in this country or in this continent, and you can use that knowledge to educate students. So again, we as faculty, we as administrators, we as professional classified employees, need to look beyond what we know and create a welcoming and safe space. So, what can we do? We can create, again, healthy spaces, whether it is in your virtual classroom or in your office. The background that you use can create a welcoming or an unsafe space for your students. All of those things, the dialogues, what you will tolerate in regards to behavior, what you will not tolerate in regards to behavior. I put everything of what I will and will not tolerate in my syllabi, but then the first day of class, we spend about 20 minutes. I just want to be clear. If you use this word, not only are you gone from this class, you will be referred for disciplinary action. Those are essential to creating healthy spaces. We all should teach with all students in mind, and we should all, again, if we are classified professionals, create healthy spaces with everyone in mind. We're talking about women, trans, queer, undocumented, individuals who have been labeled DRD, foster youth and former foster youth, poor students. I don't like to use the word low income. I think that's a sanitation approach to not seeing what's really happening, or homeless students as well, right?
Low
It,
income.
it's important that we understand that, right? If in the classroom we do not, it's important that we create spaces where we do not tolerate isms, right, in the classroom, because otherwise people feel safe to then start discriminating against our colleagues, as I like to call them. Make announcements about trainings at the beginning of your classes to all your students. There's an upcoming financial aid training. There's a scholarship training. There is a transfer process training. A deadline is coming up. Just taking 2 minutes, it shows the student that you care. The other thing that I do is I play music as we are transitioning, like 2 to 3 minutes before class starts, until the moment class starts, I play music. And that is for two different purposes: for them to, again, ground themselves into the material that we are going to present and not allow other stressors to get to them, but also, again, for them to create community. They can check in with each other. When we are in the classroom, right, and whenever we come back from COVID, again, that's my approach. I put music, sometimes videos with music that is culturally appropriate for the material I'm going to present, but students have the opportunity to check in with each other. And again, for those of you who are interested, you can provide information about mental health resources. That is the Sonoma County Warm Line at 707-565-2652. Again, unfortunately, it's only available 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for now, until we all as a community college, advocate for longer hours. And then I just have a couple more minutes here. Again, also feel free to refer students. If you don't know the answer to it, but acknowledge that you don't know the answer to it, you can always say, hey, it's important that we all take care of ourselves during COVID. It's important that what it's called, that you all go to socoemergency.org, and there's information about the fires anytime there's fires, preparation for earthquakes and other emergencies, the latest numbers on COVID, how do you protect yourself, vaccination information, testing. Yesterday, they reached out to me and they said, can you please get the information out there? Not enough community members are getting tested, especially in the Latinx community in the last few days. The numbers of people who are getting tested have gone down. Can you reach out to them? So again, we put information out via emails. We put information out via post on Instagram, Snapchat, and other tools that I have access to. And again, in your classroom, you can do the same. Hey, here is the website, one-stop shop. You can get information about testing. You can get information about the vaccines. Okay, so that's important. And then I am the president of the board of Humanidad Therapy and Education Services, which is a privilege for me to be there. And the things that we're doing that I hope you also will share with your students, we do community conversations, also known as convivencias. Lately, we've been doing them more than twice a month. Some are just in Spanish. We're going to do one in Spanish on the 18th about domestic violence. And it is only in Spanish because once we have to think about translation, a lot will be lost. So anybody who's interested in getting that information, you can reach out to Humanidad Therapy and Education Services. You can just do a quick search, and the first result is what's going to be coming up. And here you have an example of what we are doing. And this one is going to be February 24th from 11 until 1 p.m. And it's called Marginalized Folks and Eating Disorders. Again, if you send the link to that post or that poster, individuals can just literally click on the poster. You can just send them to the website, and there they can just sign up if they want to participate. You go under the website, Humanidad Therapy and Education Services, and you click on events, and that will take you to any of the events. So please share this type of information so that you then have to do less work later on because you don't have students who are stressing all the time. So again, we are more than happy to do that. And Humanidad provides therapeutic services for individuals in our community on a sliding scale. And so it's important that you know that. And among the other things, you can always tell students that they can, reach out to communities within the JC, such as MECHA, the SRJC. We're going to have our MECHA conference in March. And again, it's all going to be virtual. The HEP program here on campus for individuals who want to get their GED, the Puente program, second chance for people formerly incarcerated, Umoja, APAS, and many others. One of the other things that I've been doing since March of last year, once the pandemic started, I started Lotteria Night, which is like the Mexican bingo night. And I have about 12 families that participate every Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. We do Loteria. And it was originally for adults, and now the children are there. The children remind their parents it's at 7 because we need to log into Loteria. You can refer people to programs, not necessarily to this one, because now this one is established with these families, and adding new families will create a little bit of chaos. But other programs can be created. If needed, Mecha could host a Loteria night. Maybe Puente could host a Loteria night or something similar. Second Chance, Umoja, again, any other programs can create just healthy spaces for people to just share. And the other thing that we've been doing as Mecha de SRJC, Mecha de Montgomery High School, Humanidad Therapy, Líderes del Futuro, which is my organization outside of the JC, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we've given out over 30,000 masks, and we've passed out information about flyers to the community. We've gone door to door and passed out over 30,000 masks and information about SRJC to our community. We are waiting for more masks from the federal government. We were told that FEMA is considering sending us another 100,000, and then we'll get back out there and we'll continue to do this. Not only is this how we conduct outreach, this is how we educate the community. This is how we let them know your community college cares about you. So again, this is just a sample of what we've done, but we've been doing it for weeks and weeks on end. And one of the things that you find when you do this type of work, you find leaders in the community. It's hard to see in that picture on the left side, and I apologize for the quality. In 2017, when the first major fire happened in Sonoma County, Mecha de SRJC wasn't allowed to support the shelter at Cook Middle School. We were basically kicked out. And so we went to Windsor and we demanded a space there at Windsor High School. And eventually we were given the workout room where the weights and everything was. And eventually we had to take the dance room as well. And eventually they gave us a whole gym. And the kid that is carrying the waters out of that truck is Willie Juarez. He was 10 at that time. He is 14 today, and that's the picture on the right. And he is, again, he's a member of MECHA, the SRJC. He's a high school student now. But every time we say, Willie, we have 2,000 new masks that need to be going out there. He finishes his work and he's out there supporting his community. He's not undocumented, right? He doesn't have to be out there risking his life, but he chooses to support his community. And this is, I mentioned him for two different reasons. He is one of those unspoken heroes in our community for being such a young man, but also he's a future SRJC student. And that's what I want to convey to you. That if we reach out to our community and we say, your community college is here, then they will naturally come to us. I've been doing this for 16 years. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. And coming to a conclusion, I want to say that many speak of equity and they sit and they write beautiful everything from poetry to proposals. And they say, let's sit down, let's talk about equity. Many speak of equity, but few fully understand the work it takes to create equitable educational experiences. And most importantly, very few are willing to consciously do the work, right? It's easy to say, but it's hard to get up every morning and say, I'm willing to give up this much of my own privilege to create an equitable space for somebody else. In my class, a simple thing such as not calling students, but calling them colleagues, because I tell them from day one, I don't believe I have all the knowledge and that you are receptacles that are here to just gather that knowledge. I think you all can contribute in your own way to this class. And therefore, I will not disrespect you by calling you students, I'm sorry. I will call you colleagues. And that is how you start creating equity in the classroom. And the other thing for anybody who's interested is you can contribute to UndocuFund. Again, or undocumented brothers, sisters, and non-gender conforming individuals, they don't get, unemployment. They don't get those benefits. So if you're inclined, on my radio show, I was saying this last time when they said, hey, there's $600 coming from the federal government, and for some individuals, possibly another $1,400. I encourage as many people as possible, and I know that at least two of the people who are here today gave your money, whether it was to UndocuFund or some other organization, and I am grateful that you do that. I personally gave my money to Humanidad because it's a nonprofit and they need the money as well, right? So there are ways that you can also help, and you don't have to give up your $600. You can give out, $100, whatever it is. But these are our students, and they don't get the same support. So let's support them in whatever way we can. And finally, I have two books, right? And this is my own commercial, but Monica, who is Cornejo, who is over there at UC Santa Barbara, just wrote this children's book. It's called The Adventures of Juanito, the Undocumented Boy. There isn't really a book like this one that has been written, and it tells the story of Juanito and the experience of trying to migrate to the United States to reunite with his father. And so I invite you to consider purchasing the book, maybe buying a few copies and giving them away to other family members. It's bilingual, and most importantly, it starts the dialogue as to what happens, why people are undocumented, and the fact that you shouldn't be ashamed if you happen to be undocumented. And this is my own commercial on the right. About a year and a half ago, I wrote my book in Spanish. It's a very short book. It's more than anything just bits and pieces that I wanted to share with the community. In Spanish is Logrando tus sueños, and in English is Fulfilling the Dream, a guide for immigrant parents and allies living in the United States. The English version should be out in about 2 weeks. The Spanish version has been out for, again, about a year and a half. Half of the money that I make out of this book goes to Humanidad, therapy and educational services, and typically the other half goes to scholarships that I am offering. And so with that, I believe I have come to the conclusion of this. I'm gonna stop their recording and I will take questions if you have any questions at this time.